My name's Kirsty McCallum. I'm 56 years old from Melbourne, Australia, and I have one 30-year-old daughter. My first career was a professional ballet dancer in Europe when I was 19 to 22 years old. I left dance, met my partner, became a mum, and decided to go to university to complete a bachelor's degree in linguistics and Spanish. I worked as an English as a second language teacher in Australia and overseas from 2007 to 2015. I've also taught dance for several years and worked as a medical receptionist part-time. Currently, I'm halfway through a master's degree of speech pathology, but I've had to stop studying due to severe illness caused by withdrawal symptoms from weaning off antidepressants. I've been hospitalised on and off over the past 9 months from trying to taper from antidepressants, which I've been weaning off over the past 6 years.
Why were you first prescribed an antidepressant?
I was first prescribed an antidepressant when I was 27 years old in 1997. At that time, I was a mum of a 2-year-old, and I was struggling physically with the demands of parenting. I just started a bachelor's degree at university, and I was extremely exhausted. I actually thought I had chronic fatigue syndrome. I was not anxious or depressed. I was a happy, vivacious young woman who loved dancing. I was desperate for help with the extreme fatigue, so I sought help from a GP. The GP said, "You must have postnatal depression," even though my daughter was already 2 years old. I accepted this diagnosis of postnatal depression, and the GP prescribed me Prozac or fluoxetine, 20 milligrams, which I took obediently for 12 months.
How did the antidepressant make you feel?
Initially, it made me feel very, very high, very euphoric. I felt emotionally numb. It made me emotionally detached from my partner and my 2-year-old daughter. It didn't help the fatigue. I became insensitive to others around me, and I became less self-aware. And then over the years, I became very impulsive, disinhibited, and often made inappropriate comments or behaved in an inappropriate way. I seemed to be making errors of judgment all the time, which was very embarrassing. I became over-talkative and over-excitable. I often became aggressive and had frequent rage outbursts, which was unlike me. I became more selfish and didn't care about anything or anyone. I lost concentration and became very vague and scattered. My memory was impaired, and it became very difficult to retain new information. I stopped reading and doing the things I loved. I lost motivation for most things. Study became very difficult as I could only concentrate for very short periods.
What has your experience been when you came off or reduced the dose of the antidepressant?
Well, first of all, I was told by my doctor that I could just stop taking the antidepressant. I wasn't given any tapering advice, so I just stopped taking it. So during the first few weeks, I experienced some physical symptoms such as dizziness and nausea. And then after 8 weeks, I started experiencing some severe physical and neurological symptoms, including severe anxiety, panic, dread, spontaneous crying, insomnia, agitation, shaking, inability to sit still, heightened sensitivity to noise and light in crowded spaces, loss of appetite and extreme weight loss, aching joints, especially my back. I experienced my first major depressive episode like nothing I'd ever experienced before in my life, but I just thought it was me. It was much worse than any low mood I had previously felt during my first 27 years and before being prescribed an antidepressant. I felt like I was in a bad dream all of the time, with constant terror and dread. I felt like I was trapped in my own skin and I was fighting to get out. I became suicidal for the first time in my life. When I went back to my doctor, they did not recognize my symptoms as withdrawal. I was referred to a psychiatrist and I was diagnosed with a new mental health condition, which was major depression and anxiety. The psychiatrist put me back on another SSRI antidepressant at a higher dose. The psychiatrist said my symptoms were caused by a relapse and a worsening of depression and anxiety and not the symptoms of withdrawal. I've made 7 or more attempts to come off antidepressants. Each time, after months of terrible suffering, of withdrawal symptoms, trauma, and horrendous emotional and physical pain and disability, I couldn't stand it any longer, and I would go back to the psychiatrist and be put back on the drugs. I've been hospitalised in psychiatric hospitals and psychiatric wards several times. I've had ECT, which is electroshock therapy, during some of these severe episodes. I always was put on the medication at a much higher dose, but I felt in my gut that something was wrong. When I would start the antidepressant again, my symptoms would disappear in 20 to 30 minutes. This indicated to me that I had developed a physical dependence to these drugs, and I began to look to the internet for answers. I found an internet forum where I discovered thousands of other people who were suffering exactly the same withdrawal symptoms as myself. I cried a lot when I found this website because it was extremely confronting to face the fact that I was experiencing protracted withdrawal syndrome and I was in denial for a long time. I kept going back to the doctors and accepting the diagnosis of major mental health condition and that I would need to be on these drugs for the rest of my life. I tried different tapering methods, but these were very difficult because low doses were not available. I ended up breaking open the capsule of my medication and taking out tiny beads every day.
How has antidepressant withdrawal impacted your life as a whole?
I know this is going to sound dramatic, but it has pretty much destroyed my life. It's traumatized myself and my family and caused extreme distress. It has made it very difficult to have good relationships. I've lost work and become unable to work because I've been so debilitated. Interactions with people became difficult because I was trying so hard to contain the lack of self-control and the aggression and the loss of focus and concentration. I was bedbound and dependent on others for years at a time, which was very stressful for my family and friends. I found family and friends distanced themselves from me. I lost my confidence. I lost my identity. I felt I lost the real Kirsty. I lost the vivacious, bubbly, fun-loving, active person who loved dancing more than anything else. I became isolated. I haven't been able to follow through with a lot of things that I've wanted to do. And I've always felt pressure to go back on the antidepressants in order to be independent and not be a burden on others.
What did you need from health services that you did not receive?
I needed informed choice. I needed to be told of the potential risks, the dangers, the side effects, to be told of the difficulties of withdrawing. I needed to be treated with more empathy and compassion. I was often treated as a non-compliant, difficult patient who couldn't accept the reality of her condition. I personally am afraid that I will never get off these drugs and never fully recover to return to my previous self. And I feel that I need the help from these health services now as well as in the past.